The United Kingdom is a land where shadows cling to the stones, where every castle and ruin carries whispers of sorrow, where the fog rolls in thick and hides things that should not be seen. The air itself feels heavy with history and death. Every winding street has a story, every ancient wall remembers blood and betrayal, and the silence of the countryside at night is broken only by sounds that have no source. It is a place where time feels bent, where the past is never gone. The footsteps of the dead echo through empty halls, cries of the forgotten drift on the wind, and the restless wander without peace. People speak of phantom horsemen riding across misty moors, of weeping women standing at the side of lonely roads, of monks in tattered robes moving silently through abbeys long abandoned, and of shadows that follow you home after dark, no matter how fast you walk or how many times you look back. Castles soaked in centuries of betrayal, prisons filled with suffering and despair, asylums that echo with the cries of the mad, and graveyards where even the bravest refuse to linger after dusk. These are not only places of stone and earth, they are places alive with memory, heavy with fear, and haunted by those who will not rest. They belong to both the living and the dead, but the dead are stronger there, and they will not let go. What makes these places terrifying is not only the stories told by locals, it is the fact that so many have seen the same things time after time, faces appearing in windows when the building is empty, footsteps in corridors that no longer exist, cold hands brushing your arm in the dark, doors opening slowly as though pushed by someone invisible, voices calling your name in tones too familiar to be strangers, and a weight pressing on your chest as though someone unseen is standing over you. Even those who have lived their whole lives near these haunted places avoid them after dark. They lock their doors, they walk faster past the gates, they whisper warnings to visitors, because in the United Kingdom, the supernatural is not a distant tale, it is woven into the land, it waits in every ruin and every stone passage, it breathes in the fog, it lingers in the candlelit corners of pubs older than countries, and it waits in the shadows, ready to step into your path when you least expect. So prepare yourself, steady your heart, and keep your courage close, for we are about to journey deep into the most cursed corners of the United Kingdom, where the past bleeds into the present, where restless souls wander without peace, where the bravest have felt their courage crumble, and where the line between the living and the dead is thinner than a thread. These are the 20 most haunted places in the United Kingdom, true horror stories and encounters that will stay with you long after the lights are out. Haunted place number 1. Tower of London, London. The Tower of London is one of the most haunted locations in the entire United Kingdom. It is a fortress of stone and blood. It is a place that has seen 1,000 years of fear, betrayal, executions, and restless spirits. Its very walls seem to breathe with the echoes of suffering, and when you stand before it at night, with the Thames moving silently beside it, you feel something watching you, something older than memory, something that does not rest. Built by William the Conqueror in the year 1078, the tower was meant as a symbol of power, of domination, and of terror, and for centuries it served not only as a royal palace but as a prison, a site of torture, and the stage for some of the most infamous deaths in English history. And with each death, with each scream, with each betrayal, another ghost was bound to the stone, another shadow clung to the walls, another whisper joined the endless chorus that fills its towers and passageways. One of the most famous spirits said to haunt the tower is Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII. She was accused of treason, adultery, and witchcraft, and though the charges were false, the verdict was already written. In May 1536 she was led to the scaffold within the tower grounds. She wore a simple gown, she prayed, and then with one swift stroke of the sword her head was severed from her body. They say her ghost walks the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula where she is buried, her head tucked under her arm, drifting through the pews like a pale phantom. They say sometimes she appears near the site of her execution, her face frozen in shock, her lips moving as if still whispering prayers, and on certain cold nights, the yeoman guards who patrol the grounds have claimed to see a figure in Tudor dress, gliding through walls, vanishing before their eyes. But Anne Boleyn is not the only royal spectre bound to the tower. Another spirit said to wander the grounds is that of Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen. She was a young girl of 16 when she was crowned, and within 9 days she was stripped of her title and condemned to die. Her innocence and youth make her ghost one of the most tragic, and witnesses claim they have seen her pale form drifting across the battlements, her eyes hollow, her face sorrowful. She lingers, forever trapped in those brief days when hope and death collided. The Bloody Tower carries perhaps the darkest legend of all. It was here that the princes in the tower, Edward V and his younger brother Richard, were held in 1483, the boys were never seen again, and it is widely believed they were murdered so that their uncle Richard could take the crown. Centuries later, two small skeletons were discovered hidden within the walls of the tower, and though no proof exists, many believe they were the remains of the princes. Today their spirits are said to appear. At night, two small figures dressed in white gowns, clinging to one another, their faces pale with terror, drifting silently along the corridors. Sometimes they simply vanish into the stone itself, and the guards who see them often refuse to speak of it again. The tower has also been a place of unspeakable torture. Within the dungeons the screams of prisoners once echoed, the racks stretched bones and sinews, iron chains cut into flesh, eyes turned toward the dark hoping for mercy that never came, and even now, centuries later, visitors report hearing faint cries from the lower chambers, sudden chills that creep across the skin, shadows moving just out of sight, a heavy atmosphere of dread pressing against the chest, as if the suffering of the past is replaying itself in an endless cycle. Perhaps one of the strangest hauntings is that of the ghostly bear. The tower once held a royal menagerie, lions, monkeys, and exotic animals given as gifts to kings. One of the most feared beasts was a great bear that terrified guards and prisoners alike. Long after the animals were removed, stories began to spread of a phantom bear that appeared near the Martin Tower. Witnesses described a dark hulking shape that moved toward them, and more than once guards fled in terror, believing they were about to be mauled, only for the shape to vanish into the night air. There are also tales of phantom processions, long lines of spectral figures dressed in cloaks and armor, walking silently through the courtyards, disappearing into the walls as if some great funeral march is forever being replayed, a reminder that the tower has been not only a place of death but of endless ritual. Some visitors claim to feel hands clutching their shoulders when no one is behind them, some hear whispers carried through the stairwells, some smell the faint scent of roses where none should grow, a fragrance said to mark the presence of Queen and Bullen herself. Others feel a sudden weight in the air, a sensation of despair so heavy it makes them want to weep. The guards, known as beefeaters, many of whom live on the grounds with their families, have their own share of ghost stories. Some have woken at night to the sound of footsteps climbing the stairs, yet no one is there. Some hear knocking against their chamber doors, only to open them and find the corridor empty. One guard claimed to see the ghost of Lady Arbella Stewart, a noblewoman imprisoned for marrying without the king's permission. She died in the tower in 1615, and her pale figure is said to wander the queen's house, still seeking freedom that never came. Even animals sense the weight of the tower. Dogs brought onto the ground sometimes bark furiously at empty spaces, tails between their legs, refusing to step forward, and birds avoid perching too close, as if the very air is heavy with something unseen. Tourists who enter during the day often dismiss the legends. They take photographs, they laugh, they listen to the guides. But those who return at night for special ghost tours tell a very different story. The atmosphere changes when the sun sets, the shadows grow longer, the stones seem to breathe, the silence becomes unbearable, and in the darkness the tower feels alive, as though the dead have awoken, as though you are not just walking through history, but through the company of spirits that refuse to leave. The Tower of London is more than a fortress, more than a palace. It is a prison of time. It holds the weight of every execution, every betrayal, every cry, every drop of blood that ever touched its stones. It is no wonder it remains one of the most haunted places in the United Kingdom, and if you stand long enough in the silence of its courtyards, with the wind pressing against the battlements, you may feel eyes upon you, the eyes of the past, watching, waiting, whispering that this place will never sleep. Number 2. Edinburgh Castle, Scotland. Edinburgh Castle rises high above the city on Castle Rock, a fortress carved from ancient volcanic stone, a stronghold that has watched over Scotland for more than 1,000 years, and yet behind its walls lies not just the story of kings, queens, and wars, but of darkness, pain, and restless spirits that wander the halls even to this day. For Edinburgh Castle is not just a monument of history, it is one of the most haunted places in the world, a place where the past has refused to die, a place where the cries of the long-departed echo endlessly through the cold stone chambers. The castle itself has stood since the 12th century, but the rock beneath it has been inhabited for even longer. The ancient tribes that lived here saw it as a sacred ground, a place of power, and perhaps it is that power which still lingers, for this is a location steeped in violence and bloodshed, sieges, battles, executions, betrayals, and countless deaths, and all of that energy, all of that suffering, is said to cling to the walls, creating a shadow that never lifts. Inside the castle is the infamous dungeon system, dark, narrow tunnels carved into the rock itself, where prisoners of war, criminals, and political enemies were held for months or years, chained to the walls, starving in the dark, the air filled with the stench of rot, disease, and despair. Many never saw the light of day again, and even now, when visitors are led down into those tunnels, they describe sudden drops in temperature, icy gusts that have no source, the faint sound of footsteps. Following them, whispers that grow louder and louder until they are almost unbearable, and in the blackest corners of those tunnels, some claim to feel a hand brushing against their skin, cold and clammy, like the grip of someone long dead. One of the most famous ghost stories tied to Edinburgh Castle is that of the headless drummer boy. His ghost has been reported for centuries, often appearing on the battlements or deep within the castle walls. He is said to appear without a head, carrying his drum, beating it and warning whenever the castle is about to be under attack. His last reported appearance was before Oliver Cromwell laid siege in the 17th century. Since then, many have claimed to hear the faint sound of drumming, slow, steady, echoing across the castle grounds, though no one is there, no one visible, just the sound of a ghost forever warning of danger. Another spirit said to haunt the castle is the Piper Boy. Centuries ago, tunnels were discovered beneath the castle leading toward the Royal Mile. To test their length and safety, a small boy was sent inside with a bagpipe. He was told to keep playing as he walked, so those above could track his progress. But halfway through, the music suddenly stopped. The boy was never seen again, his body was never found, and the tunnels were sealed. Yet visitors still report hearing the faint, ghostly sound of bagpipes playing beneath their feet, drifting up through the stone, a melody that ends suddenly, leaving only silence as though the boy is forever lost in the dark. Edinburgh Castle was also the site of witch trials. In the 16th and 17th centuries, hundreds of accused witches were imprisoned, tortured, and executed, some burned alive, others strangled, their cries still said to echo in the darkest corners of the castle. Visitors walking through the old prison blocks often feel overwhelming sadness, the weight of despair pressing against them. Some burst into tears for no reason, others grow nauseous, unable to remain inside, as though the energy of those tormented souls refuses to fade. The castle also served as a military stronghold, and with that came endless war. Soldiers marched through its gates, some never returned, and today their spirits are said to linger. Ghostly figures in uniform have been seen patrolling the grounds, rifles in hand, eyes hollow, moving silently through the mist, then vanishing as if swallowed by the night. Tourists have mistaken these apparitions for actors, only to realize no such reenactments were taking place. One of the most terrifying legends is the presence of a spectral dog. Near the dog cemetery where soldiers' canine companions were buried, visitors report hearing scratching, whining, and the sound of paws moving across the gravel. Though no living dogs are there, some even claim to see the shadow of a small terrier sitting by the graves, wagging its tail, only for it to fade into nothing. There are also reports of the Grey Lady, a figure in a long cloak said to appear in the halls and staircases, sometimes gliding past tourists, leaving behind the overwhelming scent of perfume. Other times she is seen standing at windows, staring out over the city, before dissolving into mist. Some believe she is one of the many women who died in the castle's dungeons. Others believe she is a servant forever bound to the castle, doomed to wander. The castle has been the focus of scientific investigation as well. Paranormal researchers have set up cameras, recording devices, and thermal sensors throughout its halls, and the results have been chilling. Strange mists captured on film, sudden bursts of static, voices calling out names, shadows moving in rooms with no light. One experiment asked volunteers to walk alone through the dungeons blindfolded. Most reported feeling touched, pushed, or suddenly surrounded by a heavy presence. Some even screamed, begging to be taken out, and these were people who knew nothing of the ghost stories beforehand, yet all felt the same overwhelming terror. The deeper you go into the castle, the heavier the atmosphere becomes. Tourists often describe a crushing silence, broken only by unexplained bangs, screams in the distance, or the sound of chains dragging. Some feel watched the entire time, others feel their clothes tugged, their hair pulled, their breath freezing in the air though the temperature outside is mild, and always, there is that sense of being unwelcome, of being trespassers in a place that belongs to the dead. At night, Edinburgh Castle is even more terrifying. When the city quiets and the mist rolls across Castle Rock, the fortress looms like a giant shadow, and those who have spent the night there tell of footsteps moving through empty corridors, doors slamming shut, the echo of drums and pipes drifting across the air, pale faces glimpsed at windows where no one stands, and a sense that the entire building itself is alive, breathing, whispering, watching. Edinburgh Castle is not just a monument, it is a tomb, it is a prison of memories, a place where death has left its mark on every stone, and no matter how many centuries pass, the dead refuse to leave. They walk the battlements, they linger in the dungeons, they sing and cry and drum and whisper. They are bound to the rock itself. And if you ever visit, especially at night, do not be surprised if you feel a hand on your shoulder, if you hear music beneath your feet, if you see a pale face staring back at you in the dark. For in Edinburgh Castle, the line between the living and the dead is paper thin, and sometimes it disappears completely. Number 3. Ancient Ram Inn, Gloucestershire. The ancient Ram Inn stands in the quiet village of Watton-under-Edge in Gloucestershire, and from the outside it looks like just another old English inn, its timber frame leaning with age, its windows small and uneven, its roof sagging under centuries of weight. But behind that crooked smile lies something far darker, something far older than the inn itself, for this is said to be one of the most haunted buildings in all of Britain, a place where layers of tragedy and terror have built up like dust over hundreds of years, each leaving behind something that never went away. The inn dates back to the 12th century, built on land that was already old, already sacred, for historians believe the site was once home to a pagan burial ground, and beneath its foundations there may still lie the remains of ancient rituals, sacrifices and ceremonies, the kind of energy that soaks into the earth and never fades. And when the inn was built, that energy did not die, it simply shifted, wrapping itself around the walls, feeding on the life within. The ancient Ram Inn has been many things. At first it was built to house masons and workers who were constructing the nearby Church of St. Mary, but over the centuries it became a pub, a private home, and finally a notorious site of hauntings. Every owner has reported strange and terrifying activity, and visitors who dare to spend a night often leave before sunrise, unable to take the crushing weight of what lingers inside. One of the most chilling stories is that of child sacrifices that are said to have taken place in the inn's earliest days. Bones of children have reportedly been found beneath the floors, and psychics who have entered the building claim to sense the cries of the young, their voices echoing through the rooms. In the bishop's room, one of the inn's most infamous areas, guests have described the sound of children sobbing, tiny footsteps running across the floorboards, and the feeling of small icy hands reaching out in the dark, tugging at their clothes. The bishop's room itself has been called one of the most haunted rooms in England, and those who dare to enter often leave shaken. Guests have seen figures in monks' robes standing in the corner, vanishing when approached. Others describe a woman in white drifting silently across the room, her face hidden, her presence so cold that it numbs the skin. Still others tell of shadows moving along the ceiling, crawling like spiders, growing larger until they cover the entire room, plunging it into darkness even when the lamps are lit. Another terrifying story is that of the witch's spirit. Legend says that in the 1500s a woman accused of witchcraft hid inside the inn before being captured and burned at the stake. Her spirit is said to remain vengeful and furious. Guests report being scratched by unseen hands, shoved against walls, or woken in the night by the smell of burning flesh. Some have seen her apparition, a woman with hollow eyes and hair that moves like smoke, standing at the foot of the bed, glaring in silence, until she fades. There are also tales of a succubus, a demonic entity that attacks sleeping guests, pressing down on their chests, stealing their breath, leaving them paralyzed in terror. Some claim to wake in the middle of the night unable to move, with the sensation of something straddling them, whispering in a voice too low to understand, a shadowy figure that vanishes the moment they can scream, leaving behind only bruises and the sickening feeling of being violated. The attic is no less frightening. It is said to be home to the ghost of a murdered girl, a servant who tried to escape her master's cruelty, only to be caught and killed. Her cries are said to echo from the rafters. Visitors hear scratching above their heads as if someone is clawing at the wood, trying to get out, and more than one guest has seen the pale face of a young girl peering down from the attic window, even though no one is there. Even the land itself feels cursed. The inn sits at the meeting point of two ancient ley lines, believed by some to be channels of spiritual energy, one of which runs directly from Stonehenge. This energy is said to amplify whatever spirits or entities dwell there, making the ancient Ram Inn not just haunted, but a kind of beacon, drawing in restless souls, feeding the activity inside. Some call it a portal, a doorway between worlds, a place where the veil is thin and anything can come through. Paranormal investigators who have stayed overnight describe the inn as overwhelming. The temperature drops suddenly, rooms grow icy cold even in summer, footsteps are heard on the stairs though no one is there, doors slam shut with enough force to rattle the entire house. Objects are thrown across the room, stones, books, even furniture. One investigator claimed to be pinned to the wall by an invisible force, held there until he cried out in prayer, at which point he was released. The current owners have embraced its reputation, allowing ghost hunters and brave tourists to spend the night, but many leave in the middle of their stay shaken and pale, some too terrified to even speak of what they experienced. One guest ran screaming from the bishop's room, claiming she saw the ghost of a soldier in full armor standing above her bed, staring with lifeless eyes. Another group fled after hearing chanting coming from the walls, low, guttural, in a language none of them could recognize. The ancient Ram-Inn is not a place for the faint of heart. Its history is soaked in blood and sorrow, and its walls seem alive with the energy of centuries of torment. Every corner has a story, every room a shadow, every night a reminder that the dead do not rest easily here, and those who step inside may find themselves face to face with something they cannot explain, something they cannot fight, something that will follow them long after they leave. If you ever travel through Gloucestershire, you may pass the ancient Ram-Inn, crooked and unassuming, but if you are tempted to enter, remember the stories, remember the screams, remember that countless visitors have sworn never to return, for inside its walls the line between this world and the next is thin, and once you step across, you may never truly step back. Number 4. Borley Rectory, Essex. Borley Rectory in Essex has often been called the most haunted house in England, and even though the building itself was destroyed by fire in 1939, the legends that surround it have refused to die. The stories cling to the land, to the ruins, to the very soil where it once stood, and for decades it has been a place where the line between the living and the dead feels blurred. The rectory was built in 1862 by Reverend Henry Bull on land that already carried whispers of tragedy, stories of a monastery once standing there, of a monk who fell in love with a nun, their forbidden affair ending in horror, with the monk executed and the nun bricked alive within the walls. Legend says her spirit still wanders the grounds, her head bowed, her white figure drifting silently through the garden, and many who lived at or visited the rectory claim to see her. The hauntings began almost immediately after the rectory was built. The Bull family reported strange footsteps, bells ringing on their own, and whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Servants would refuse to enter certain rooms, claiming to feel a presence standing behind them, watching them, sometimes even breathing against their necks, but when they turned, no one was there. Perhaps the most famous spirit tied to Borley Rectory is the nun, often seen gliding across the grounds, sometimes accompanied by the sound of soft weeping. She became so notorious that locals would gather outside the house hoping to catch a glimpse. Some did, describing a pale figure that appeared solid at first, then faded like smoke, and those who saw her often claimed to feel an overwhelming sadness, as if her grief reached out and wrapped itself around them. In 1928, Reverend Lionel Foister and his wife Marianne moved into the rectory, and it was during their time that the activity reached terrifying new levels. Marianne reported being thrown from her bed by unseen hands, objects flew across rooms, and messages began to appear on the walls, scrawled in childlike handwriting. Some of them seemed to be directed at her, crying for help, begging for prayers, even calling out her name as if the house itself was alive and trying to communicate. The Foisters endured years of torment, and their reports caught the attention of famed paranormal investigator Harry Price, who would go on to investigate Borley Rectory more than once. Price brought teams of researchers, mediums, and equipment, documenting everything from footsteps and knocking sounds to the sighting of shadowy figures and sudden cold spots. He declared Borley Rectory the most haunted house in England, cementing its dark reputation forever. In 1939, a fire broke out, leaving the rectory in ruins, but even then the hauntings did not stop. Locals reported seeing ghostly lights flickering in the ruins, shadowy forms moving among the rubble, and the figure of the nun still drifting across the grounds, her sorrow undimmed, her presence as strong as ever, as if the destruction of the building only released whatever had been trapped inside. To this day, Borley is a place of fascination and fear. Skeptics argue that the stories were exaggerated, that Harry Price staged some of the evidence, but believers insist that no amount of trickery could explain the sheer volume of experiences reported by so many over so many years. Too many people, too many sightings, too many voices calling out in the dark. Borley Rectory may be gone, but its legend remains, a reminder that sometimes buildings hold on to pain, that sometimes history refuses to stay buried, and that there are places where the dead still walk, leaving behind traces for the living to find, long after the fire has burned away the walls. Number 5. Pendle Hill, Lancashire. Pendle Hill in Lancashire is one of the most infamous haunted locations in all of the United Kingdom, its dark history tied forever to the Pendle Witch Trials of 1612, a time of fear, superstition, and brutal executions, and the hill still carries the weight of that suffering even now. In the early 1600s, 12 people from around Pendle Hill were accused of practicing witchcraft, of consorting with the devil, and of casting curses that caused illness and death. 10 of them were found guilty and hanged, their bodies gone but their stories burned into the land. Locals say their restless spirits have never left. Visitors to the hill often report feeling watched, as though unseen eyes are following them through the mist. Some hear whispers carried on the wind, voices calling their names. Others have seen shadowy figures moving between the trees, vanishing when approached, and there are even tales of dark shapes crouched on the ground, muttering, only to dissolve into the shadows when confronted. One of the most chilling accounts comes from those who claim to have seen the ghostly figures of the witches themselves, women in old clothes appearing suddenly on the path, glaring with sunken eyes before fading back into the fog. Many describe the air around them growing bitterly cold, their bodies shivering though no wind blows. Pendle Hill is also known for strange lights, glowing orbs that float across the slopes at night. Some say they are the souls of the condemned searching for peace. Others believe they are the flickering remnants of spells cast centuries ago, forever trapped in the earth. Even today, ghost hunters and thrill seekers climb the hill, especially on Halloween, hoping to make contact with the spirits of the witches, and many come away shaken, claiming to have recorded eerie voices, phantom footsteps, and even growls in the darkness, as if the land itself resents their presence. Pendle Hill is more than just a haunted place, it is a reminder of cruelty, injustice, and the power of fear, and whether you believe in ghosts or not, standing on its slopes, surrounded by silence and shadows, you cannot help but feel the past pressing in, the memory of the witches, the echo of their suffering, and the sense that you are never truly alone. Number 6. Hampton Court Palace, London. Hampton Court Palace in London is one of the grandest and most historically significant royal residences in the United Kingdom, but behind its beauty and power lies a chilling reputation for hauntings that stretches back centuries, making it one of the most feared palaces in the country. Built in the early 1500s and famously associated with King Henry VIII, the palace has seen political intrigue, betrayal, death, and despair within its walls, and it is no surprise that the echoes of its bloody history still linger. Many believe the ghosts of those who suffered in life remain trapped in its endless corridors, staircases, and chambers, forever walking the halls where their fates were sealed. The most famous haunting of Hampton Court is that of Catherine Howard, the fifth wife of Henry VIII, who was accused of adultery and dragged away screaming through the palace. Witnesses say her ghost still runs along the gallery, known now as the Haunted Gallery, with desperate cries echoing through the halls, as though her terror is repeating endlessly. Visitors often describe hearing her piercing screams, feeling icy chills, and even seeing a white figure rushing past before fading into nothingness. Another well-known ghost said to appear is Jane Seymour, Henry's third wife, who died giving birth to his long-awaited son. Some claim she has been seen carrying a flickering candle, gliding silently down the stairs that once belonged to her private apartments, her sorrow etched into her pale, glowing form. But the most frightening event linked to Hampton Court happened in 2003, when security cameras caught the image of a mysterious figure dressed in robes, with skeletal hands, pulling open the heavy fire doors that lead into the palace. Staff called the figure Skeletor, and to this day no explanation has ever been found for the terrifying footage. Other accounts tell of shadowy figures in the courtyards, cold spots in the grand chambers, and footsteps pacing through empty rooms at night. Many visitors leave with a deep sense of dread, as though the palace is alive, watching, and remembering every tragedy that unfolded within its walls. Hampton Court Palace may be a magnificent landmark of English history, but it is also a place where the line between the living and the dead blurs, where royalty and tragedy mix with echoes of screams and whispers, and where the ghosts of the past refuse to be silenced. Number 7. Glamis Castle, Scotland. Glamis Castle in Scotland is one of the most iconic and mysterious castles in the United Kingdom, with centuries of chilling legends, whispered secrets, and ghost stories that make it one of the most haunted places in the country. The castle dates back to the 14th century and is closely tied to the Scottish royal family, but while it has an air of grandeur and beauty on the outside, its dark reputation for hidden rooms, restless spirits, and cursed histories runs deep. One of the most famous legends is the tale of the monster of Glamis, said to be a deformed heir of the family, born with such a horrific appearance that he was hidden away in a secret chamber within the castle for his entire life. Locals and visitors claim that the sound of dragging footsteps, heavy breathing, and strange knocks can be heard from behind the bricked-up walls, as though the tormented soul still lingers in eternal confinement. Another chilling presence is the Grey Lady, believed to be the ghost of Lady Janet Douglas, accused of witchcraft in the 16th century and burned at the stake. Her spirit is said to roam the chapel and nearby rooms, her sorrowful figure often appearing to those who wander too far alone, bringing with her an intense feeling of grief and despair. The castle is also said to house the restless soul of a man who once lost a game of cards with the devil himself. The story tells that during a storm, the man foolishly invited the devil into the castle to play cards, and from that night onward, screams, banging doors, and unnatural laughter have echoed through the halls at night, as if the game never ended. Guests have reported seeing shadowy figures moving across staircases, lights flickering in empty rooms, and even hearing voices whispering their names when no one else is around. The sheer number of ghost stories tied to Glamis has made it legendary among paranormal investigators. With its eerie legends, tragic history, and terrifying sightings, Glamis Castle remains one of Scotland's darkest and most haunted locations, a place where the past refuses to fade, and the walls themselves seem to hide dreadful secrets. Number 8. Highgate Cemetery, London. Highgate Cemetery in London is not only one of the most famous burial grounds in the United Kingdom, it is also one of the most terrifying, with layers of history, superstition, and ghostly tales that make it a place people fear to visit after dark. Opened in 1839, the cemetery was designed as part of the Victorian movement to create grand and beautiful resting places. Yet over time, Highgate gained a much darker reputation. The overgrown ivy-leaning tombstones, cracked mausoleums, and winding paths through the dense trees created a natural stage for ghost stories and urban legends to thrive. One of the most famous stories is that of the Highgate vampire, a tall, dark figure with glowing red eyes that was reported throughout the 1960s and 1970s. Witnesses swore they saw the creature gliding silently through the cemetery, vanishing into the shadows of the tombs. Some described it as a spectral figure cloaked in black, while others believed it was a supernatural vampire feeding on the energies of the living. Panic grew so much that self-proclaimed vampire hunters began to break into the cemetery at night, performing rituals and digging into graves in hopes of driving the entity away. But the Highgate vampire is not the only legend here. Countless visitors have spoken of phantom faces appearing in mausoleum windows, hands reaching out from the graves, and a sudden drop in temperature so sharp that their breath turned to mist even on warm summer nights. Many describe an overwhelming sense of being watched, as though the spirits of the thousands buried there never rest, their eyes following anyone brave enough to wander through the narrow paths. Among the most chilling reports is that of a floating nun, a spectral woman dressed in pale robes who glides silently among the gravestones before vanishing into the darkness. Some believe she was tied to a nearby convent centuries ago, while others think she may be one of the many who died tragically and were laid to rest in Highgate. There are also stories of phantom dogs, black shadows with glowing eyes that snarl at late-night visitors before disappearing, as well as tales of sudden scratches, pushes, or voices calling names from the darkness. Those who have spent the night illegally inside the cemetery often report fleeing in terror, swearing they heard footsteps behind them but finding no one when they turned. Even in the daytime, Highgate retains an eerie atmosphere. Its crumbling architecture, statues of angels eroded into frightening forms, and the thick silence broken only by crows and the rustle of the trees all give the impression that the dead are not truly gone. Paranormal investigators who have brought equipment here often record unexplained voices, mysterious mists, and light anomalies that defy logical explanation. With over 170,000 souls buried in its grounds, including poets, politicians, and everyday Londoners, Highgate Cemetery stands as more than just a historic graveyard. It is a place where tragedy, myth, and supernatural terror intertwine, creating one of the most haunted cemeteries in the entire world. Those who dare to step through its gates after sunset speak of unforgettable experiences, and some never return at all. Number 9. Chillingham Castle, Northumberland. Chillingham Castle is often described as the most haunted castle in the whole of England, a place where history drips from the stone walls, where centuries of violence, torture, and suffering have soaked into the ground, leaving behind echoes that refuse to fade. Built in the 13th century, the castle served as a stronghold during the bloody border wars between England and Scotland, and its dark past makes it no surprise that countless ghost stories have grown from within its walls. One of the most famous spirits said to roam Chillingham is the Blue Boy, also known as the Radiant Boy. Visitors claim to hear the sound of a child crying in the dead of night, the wails echoing through the thick stone corridors, followed by a flash of blue light that glows faintly before fading away into nothingness. Legend tells that the bones of a boy, still dressed in fragments of blue clothing, were discovered hidden inside one of the castle's walls centuries later, as if the child had been bricked up alive. Since then, many believe his ghost has never stopped searching for peace, drifting endlessly through the castle halls. But the Blue Boy is not alone. Chillingham Castle was infamous for its torture chamber, a grim dungeon filled with cruel devices such as racks, cages, and spikes, where prisoners suffered unspeakable agony. The cries of those tormented men and women are said to still linger, their shadows appearing near the dungeon entrance, their screams and groans heard faintly in the cold air. Some visitors claim to feel sudden sharp pains on their skin, as though invisible hands are pulling or cutting at them. The White Pantry ghost is another chilling presence. The story goes that a castle guard once reported being confronted by a pale, ghostly woman who appeared out of nowhere in the pantry, begging him for a drink of water. The guard, shaken, realized that her figure was half transparent, her face sunken, her voice hollow. Since then, others have claimed to see her in the same area, wandering aimlessly as though still thirsty, still lost between the world of the living and the dead. Throughout the castle, guests report doors opening and slamming shut by themselves, sudden icy drafts sweeping across the rooms, and the feeling of invisible eyes watching from every corner. The Grand Hall, once a place of banquets and gatherings, is said to echo with phantom laughter and the sound of clinking glasses, as though the ghosts of noblemen and soldiers still gather to feast in another realm. Even the castle grounds are not free from haunting. Many speak of phantom soldiers, spectral figures clad in armor or ragged uniforms, marching silently across the lawns, their boots crunching on gravel even when no one is there. Some visitors describe seeing shapes moving in the distance, only to vanish when approached. With its blood-soaked history, its countless battles, and the horrors of its torture chamber, Chillingham Castle has earned its place as one of the most terrifying haunted sites in the UK. To step inside is to step into centuries of fear, sorrow, and restless spirits, and for many who have dared to visit, the castle leaves a mark that never fades. Number 10. The Skirrid Inn, Wales. The Skirrid Inn in Wales is often called one of the most haunted inns in the entire United Kingdom, and for good reason. With a history that stretches back more than 900 years, this old building has seen war, betrayal, suffering, and death. Its stone walls hold secrets of centuries gone by, and those secrets refuse to stay silent. The inn was not always just a place to eat, drink, and rest. It once served as a courthouse, where men and women were tried for crimes both great and small. Many were found guilty, and their punishment was death. In fact, it is said that over 180 people were hanged inside the very walls of the Skirrid Inn. The hangings were carried out from a beam above the staircase, and even today, visitors claim they can still see marks in the wood where the ropes once tightened. The air around that beam feels heavy, and some guests report choking sensations or the feeling of a rope tightening around their neck, as though the past executions are still replaying themselves on a loop. One of the most chilling spirits tied to the inn is that of a hanging judge, believed to have sentenced countless men to death. His stern presence is said to linger in the upstairs courtroom, where sudden drops in temperature, disembodied voices, and an overwhelming sense of authority are reported. Visitors often describe the feeling of being judged, watched, or condemned, even though no one else is in the room. But the spirits of the condemned are there too. Many guests and paranormal investigators have claimed to see dark shadow figures standing by the staircase, sometimes appearing to sway slightly, as if their lifeless bodies are still dangling from invisible ropes. Others have heard boots scraping on the floor, followed by a sudden silence, or moans of pain echoing in the darkness. The Skirrid Inn is also said to be haunted by former soldiers. During uprisings in Wales, the inn became a meeting place and bloodshed often followed. The ghosts of those men are thought to march through the building at night, their heavy footsteps heard on the upper floors. At times, glasses behind the bar have been known to rattle or fall to the ground without explanation, as if the soldiers are still restless, still unsettled, still demanding attention. And yet, not all spirits in the inn are violent or frightening. Some report the presence of a womanly figure, thought to be a former landlady or a servant of the inn. She has been seen gliding softly through the halls, arranging rooms, or standing quietly at the edge of a bed. Guests who encounter her describe a calm but sorrowful energy, as though she is tied forever to her duties, unwilling or unable to leave. Countless paranormal groups have investigated the Skirrid Inn, and almost all report strange happenings, unexplained lights, sudden cold gusts, touches on the arm or back when no one else is near, and voices captured on recorders whispering names or pleas for help. With its gruesome history of executions, its long centuries as a gathering place for rebels and soldiers, and the many deaths that occurred within its walls, the Skirrid Inn is a building steeped in restless energy. For many who dare to stay the night, it becomes an experience they never forget. The inn does not just tell its history, it makes you feel it, in every creak of the floorboards, every cold shiver on the neck, and every shadow that lingers just beyond the candlelight. Number 11, Pluckley Village, Kent. Pluckley Village in Kent is often called the most haunted village in England, and for good reason. The village is said to be home to more than a dozen restless spirits, each with their own story, each tied to a place that still stands today, quiet on the surface but filled with echoes of the past. One of the most famous tales is that of the Screaming Man, believed to have been a brickworker who died in a tragic accident. His cries are said to pierce the night air near a certain pit, chilling those who pass by. The sound is so real that many mistake it for a living man in distress, only to find nothing there but silence and shadows. Then there is the Highwayman, a ghostly figure who hides behind a tree at the edge of the village. Witnesses report seeing him leap out with pistols drawn, only to vanish into thin air. The sense of threat and tension lingers, as though the ambush is still happening in some other time that bleeds into our own. The village churchyard is also said to be haunted. A lady in red has been seen drifting among the gravestones, her cloak flowing in the night breeze. Her presence is often accompanied by a sudden coldness, and some claim to see her kneeling as though in mourning, forever tied to grief that never ends. Another chilling tale comes from the Black Horse Inn, where unseen hands are said to move glasses and pull at clothing. Laughter is heard when no one is near, and cold gusts move through the bar even on warm nights. The inn has been a hub of hauntings for centuries, making it a hotspot for those who dare to seek the paranormal. Pluckley also has the Phantom Coach and Horses, which can be heard clattering down the lanes in the dead of night, the sound of hooves and wheels echoing across the still village. Yet when people look, there is nothing but empty roads and thick fog, the echoes of the past refusing to fade. The schoolmaster spirit is another story, said to haunt the area where he once lived. His figure is often described as tall and solemn, pacing back and forth, his energy restless, as though burdened by failures or tragedies that still weigh heavy even after death. Even the woods near Pluckley are said to be alive with hauntings. Walkers speak of figures darting between trees, whispers in the darkness, and sudden overwhelming dread that makes them turn back, unable to shake the feeling of being followed. Every corner of Pluckley Village seems to carry a ghost story, from the inns to the churches to the quiet lanes and farmlands. It is a place where history refuses to remain silent, where the past insists on bleeding into the present, and where the spirits of the lost linger, seen and unseen, felt and feared. Number 12. Whitby Abbey, North Yorkshire. Whitby Abbey stands in ruins above the North Sea, its towering Gothic arches and broken stone walls silhouetted against the sky. A place of deep history and darker legends, it is one of the most haunted spots in the UK, and its presence has inspired stories for centuries. The Abbey is most famously tied to Bram Stoker's Dracula, the chilling novel that drew from Whitby's atmosphere of gloom and mystery. Locals say the Abbey itself carries an energy that feeds such tales, the sound of the waves crashing against the cliffs below blending with the whispers of the dead that linger in the ruins. Visitors often speak of ghostly monks seen moving silently through the remains, their hoods pulled low, their figures pale and fading like smoke in the wind. Some say they are still bound to their prayers, walking the paths they walked in life, unable to leave even as the centuries pass. One of the most unsettling stories tells of a phantom nun, her figure often spotted along the cliffside near the Abbey, her robes fluttering in the sea wind. She is said to have been walled up alive centuries ago for breaking her vows, her sorrow and her cries carried endlessly on the coastal breeze. Shadows move across the abbey grounds even when no one is there, cold spots are felt in the open air, and eerie chanting has been reported in the dead of night, as though the monks are still singing their hymns long after their voices should have been silenced. The abbey's location only adds to its terrifying beauty. Perched above the sea with jagged rocks below, fog rolls in from the ocean and wraps around the ruins, distorting sound and sight. Many who visit feel as though they are being watched from the empty windows and arches, eyes that belong not to the living but to the echoes of the past. Whitby Abbey is not only a place of history, it is a place of lingering spirits, sorrow, and myth, the kind of place where every ruined wall tells a story, where every gust of wind carries a voice, and where every visitor leaves with the feeling that the dead are never far away. Number 13, Blickling Hall, Norfolk. Blickling Hall in Norfolk is one of the most beautiful country houses in England. Its red brick facade and wide gardens seem peaceful during the day, but as night falls, the atmosphere shifts, and the estate becomes one of the most haunted places in the entire country, a place where history and tragedy mix with legend and the supernatural. The most famous ghost of Blickling Hall is Anne Boleyn, the doomed second wife of King Henry VIII, who was executed at the Tower of London in 1536. Legend says that on the anniversary of her death, Anne returns to her childhood home, not as the lively young woman she once was, but as a sorrowful and terrifying apparition. Her ghost said to arrive in a black carriage drawn by headless horses, driven by a headless coachman, with Anne herself seated inside holding her own severed head in her lap. The image is enough to strike fear into anyone who dares to imagine such a scene on the dark country roads that lead to the hall. Her spirit does not only remain in the carriage, some say she roams the halls of Blickling itself, gliding silently through the rooms she once knew, her headless figure drifting past stunned witnesses. Others claim her cries of despair echo faintly through the old corridors, a reminder of her unjust fate, her presence so strong that even the bravest visitors have admitted to fleeing the halls after dark. Anne Boleyn is not the only ghost tied to Blickling Hall. Her father, Sir Thomas Boleyn, is also said to suffer a dreadful curse. He is doomed to ride across the countryside around Blickling, his ghost forced to cross dozens of bridges before sunrise, his spectral form seen riding a black carriage surrounded by a terrible fire. Local folklore claims that this punishment was given to him because he failed to protect his daughter, his restless soul forever bound to the land, carrying the guilt of her death. Other visitors to Blickling Hall have reported strange happenings in the rooms and staircases. Phantom footsteps echo when no one is there, cold spots strike suddenly in the warm summer air, and the feeling of being watched is overwhelming. Some have seen ghostly figures of servants wandering the corridors, as if still bound to their duty centuries after their deaths, while others tell of mysterious lights flickering in windows that are supposed to be empty. The library is said to be particularly active, books sometimes falling from shelves on their own, and a deep oppressive silence filling the room when the presence of something unseen is near. In the bedrooms, shadowy forms have been spotted standing over beds, vanishing the moment the light is turned on. Guests who have dared to stay overnight describe waking to the sound of heavy breathing or the faint rustle of skirts moving across the floor. Outside the hall, the gardens and grounds carry their own unease. The long driveway where Anne's phantom carriage is said to arrive is thick with dread at night. Some locals refuse to walk there after dark, convinced that the black horses still thunder up the path at midnight, bringing with them the doomed queen and the echoes of her death. The mist that often drifts across the estate adds to the atmosphere, cloaking the land in a veil of fear. Blickling Hall is not only haunted by ghosts, it is haunted by history itself, a reminder of the cruelty of the Tudor court and the sorrow that clings to the Boleyn family name. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind against the windows, and every shadow that moves in the corner of the eye feels like proof that the spirits here are still very much alive, still tied to their pain, and still searching for peace that may never come. Blickling Hall remains one of the most terrifying places in the UK, not just because of its ghosts, but because of the weight of history pressing against its walls. Those who visit say it is impossible to leave without feeling as though something has followed them, a reminder that the past is never truly gone, especially in a place where death, betrayal, and sorrow have left scars that can never fade. Number 14. Dover Castle, Kent. Dover Castle stands high on the white cliffs of Kent, its walls rising strong against the sea winds, a fortress that has guarded England for over 9 centuries, its long history filled with war, sieges, and countless deaths. And with such a history come stories of ghosts, strange happenings, and restless spirits that refuse to leave. The castle has been called the key to England because of its strategic position. It has been used since Roman times, strengthened by the Normans, and defended during wars across the centuries. Deep within its tunnel, soldiers waited in the dark during World War II, listening to bombs fall above. Many never left those tunnels alive, and it is said their spirits still linger in the shadows, their footsteps echoing faintly through the stone passages long after their bodies were gone. Visitors often report hearing the sounds of marching boots in the lower levels, but when they turn, the corridors are empty. Whispers drift through the air, and voices too low to understand, but clear enough to unsettle even the bravest. Sometimes a sudden rush of cold air brushes past, as if a ghostly figure has walked straight through the living, leaving behind only the chill of the grave. One of the most famous hauntings of Dover Castle is that of a headless drummer boy. Legend says the boy was carrying money through the castle when he was attacked and killed, his head cut from his body and his treasure stolen. His ghost is said to appear in the castle grounds, drumming in the night, the sound echoing faintly across the stones, and his headless figure seen wandering the pathways, still searching for what was taken from him. Another ghost tied to the castle is a mysterious woman in red. Her spirit has been spotted drifting silently through the halls, her dress trailing as though she were still alive. Some say she was the lover of a soldier who died defending the castle. Others believe she was imprisoned in its dungeons and died alone, her sorrow etched into the walls forever. Those who see her say she does not speak, but her presence is filled with grief, and the room grows icy when she appears. The underground tunnels are perhaps the most chilling part of Dover Castle. During the Second World War they were used as air raid shelters and military command centers. Thousands of people filled those cramped spaces, and fear was thick in the air. Many visitors today say the tunnels feel alive, with shadows that move when no one is there, doors that slam shut on their own, and the faint sound of crying echoing through the stone. Even seasoned guides admit they feel uneasy when left alone. Below ground, there are also reports of ghostly knights clad in armor, their figures seen standing watch over the walls, as though still guarding the fortress centuries after death. Some have heard the metallic clank of swords, or the heavy sound of armor moving across the battlements, but no one is there, just the memory of soldiers long gone, repeating their duty in an endless loop. Dover Castle is more than a monument of stone. It is a place where history has soaked into the earth, where the blood and suffering of centuries have left imprints too deep to fade. Every dark corner, every echoing hall, every gust of cold wind feels like a reminder that the spirits of the past still walk its walls, still watch its gates, and still guard the fortress that has stood for nearly 1,000 years. Number 15. The Hellfire Caves, West Wickham. The Hellfire Caves in West Wickham are unlike any other haunted place in the United Kingdom. Carved deep into the chalk hills in the mid-18th century by Sir Francis Dashwood, these winding tunnels stretch underground for nearly a mile, and they were never meant to be ordinary caves. They were built for secrecy, for ritual, and for indulgence, a place where the infamous Hellfire Club could gather away from prying eyes. The Hellfire Club was notorious, its members made up of wealthy men, politicians, and even members of the nobility. They met in the caves to drink heavily, to gamble, to mock religion, and to engage in strange rituals that blurred the line between blasphemy and occult practices. Stories tell of masked figures dressed in robes, strange chants echoing in the tunnels, and mock ceremonies that called upon dark forces. Whether they truly summoned anything or not, the atmosphere of the caves remains heavy, as if something stayed behind after all those gatherings. As visitors walk deeper into the caves, the air grows colder and the silence becomes almost unbearable. The winding paths twist and turn, lit only by faint lamps, and the walls seem to close in. Many who enter report feeling watched, as though unseen eyes follow them in the darkness. There are sudden drops of icy air that should not exist underground, whispers that fade as quickly as they come, and figures that vanish when a torchlight is turned toward them. The most chilling ghost said to haunt the Hellfire Caves is the spirit of a young girl named Suki. According to legend, she worked as a maid in the local village and had fallen in love with a man of higher class. Her jealous rivals tricked her by luring her into the caves under the promise of meeting her lover, but instead she was attacked, struck with a stone, and left to die within the cold tunnels. Her ghost has been seen many times, wearing a white dress, drifting silently through the passages. Some visitors hear her soft cries echoing in the darkness, while others feel a sudden brush against their arm as though she is reaching out for help. But Suki is not the only spirit tied to the Hellfire Caves. Shadow figures are often spotted lurking in the far corners, too tall and too dark to be human. Some believe they are the spirits of the Hellfire Club members themselves. cursed to remain in the place where they summoned powers they could not control. Others say they are something far older, something that was awakened by their rituals and now stalks the tunnels endlessly. The banqueting hall, one of the largest chambers within the caves, is said to be the most haunted spot. Visitors have reported the sound of laughter, glasses clinking, and even music playing faintly in the background, as if the ghostly parties of the Hellfire Club still continue to this day. But when the lights are shown, the hall is silent and empty, the echoes of the past fading into the cold air. Even modern ghost hunters and paranormal investigators have captured strange phenomena in the Hellfire Caves: sudden temperature drops, unexplained shadows moving across the walls, and electronic devices malfunctioning without reason. Some claim to have recorded voices whispering their names, others captured cries of pain echoing through the stone, as though the caves themselves remember the horrors within. The Hellfire Caves are a place where history, legend, and the supernatural meet, a labyrinth of darkness that feels alive. Every turn could bring an icy chill, every chamber could hold a shadow waiting to be seen, and every step feels like walking closer to something you are not meant to find. Many leave with relief, glad to step back into daylight, but others carry with them the memory of whispers in the dark, cold hands brushing against their skin, and the overwhelming feeling that the Hellfire Caves are not empty and never will be. Number 16. Mary King's Close, Edinburgh. Beneath the bustling streets of Edinburgh's Royal Mile lies one of the most infamous haunted sites in all of Scotland, Mary King's Close. A labyrinth of narrow alleyways and abandoned dwellings sealed off for centuries, it is a place where history lingers heavy in the air, where tragedy carved its mark deep into the stones, and where the whispers of the dead are said to echo long after their lives were taken. Mary King's Close was once a thriving part of the city in the 17th century. Families lived tightly packed together in cramped rooms, merchants sold goods from the shadows of the tall, leaning buildings, and children played in the alleys. But life here was harsh, disease ran rampant, and when the plague arrived in Edinburgh, the Close became one of the most devastated areas. Hundreds of people died in these very rooms. Some say many were sealed inside, their homes bricked up to contain the sickness. Left to die in darkness with no escape, the very walls of Mary King's Close became a tomb. It is no wonder then that the Close is haunted. Visitors speak of ghostly figures lurking at the far ends of the alleys, vanishing when approached. Footsteps follow tourists even when no one is there, and a constant feeling of being watched hangs heavy in the darkness. Many describe icy cold spots, the sudden brush of unseen hands, and voices whispering in the silence, as though the trapped souls are still desperate to be heard. One of the most famous spirits is that of a little girl named Annie. Her story has drawn thousands to the Close. She is said to have died during the plague, separated from her family and left alone. Her ghost appears to visitors as a young child in tattered clothing. Her cries echo through the rooms where she once lived. A Japanese psychic visiting in the 1990s claimed to have seen her, describing her sadness and fear, and ever since, people leave toys, dolls, and offerings in her room. A shrine to Annie now stands in the Close, filled with gifts from around the world, but even with the toys, her presence still chills all who encounter her. Other spirits are less innocent. Some speak of shadowy figures rushing past, of tall dark shapes lurking in corners, and of a woman in black who is seen drifting silently through the rooms, her face hidden, her intentions unknown. The fear she inspires is overwhelming. Some believe she was a plague victim, others say she is something darker, tied to the despair of the place itself. Her appearance is often followed by sudden drops in temperature and the feeling of suffocation. The oppressive atmosphere of Mary King's Close cannot be ignored. The air feels heavy, almost alive, and each turn of the alley seems to hold something unseen. Tour guides have told countless stories of visitors fainting suddenly, overcome with dread, and others rushing out in panic after claiming to see faces watching them from the shadows. Even modern investigators, armed with cameras and recorders, leave shaken with strange images, distorted voices, and unexplained knocks following them through the night. What makes Mary King's Close so terrifying is not just its ghosts, but the knowledge that every stone here witnessed suffering, death, and fear. The Close was sealed for centuries, a graveyard of memories buried beneath the city, and when it was reopened, it seemed the dead were not ready to be disturbed. Their restless energy fills the passageways, making it one of the most paranormally active places in all of Scotland. To walk through Mary King's Close is to step back into the past, but it is also to step into a place where the past refuses to stay silent. The cries of the dying still echo, the shadow of plague lingers, and the spirits of those who suffered remain. waiting for anyone brave enough to wander into the darkness. For some, it is a fascinating history lesson, but for others, it is an encounter they never forget, because in Mary King's Close, the dead are not just remembered, they are still very much present. Number 17. The Jamaica Inn, Cornwall. On the lonely Bodmin Moor in Cornwall stands a building that has earned its place as one of the most haunted inns in the entire United Kingdom. The Jamaica Inn, a place wrapped in mystery, legend, and countless ghost stories that stretch back centuries. It is more than just a pub or an inn, it is a landmark steeped in smuggling history, a relic of a darker past where shadows ruled the night and lawless men found safe haven. The inn was built in 1750 and almost immediately became a place where smugglers could gather. Its remote position on the wild moor made it the perfect stop for those bringing contraband inland. Brandy, rum, and tobacco were stashed in hidden cellars and secret corners, and deals were whispered in the low-lit rooms. It is said that cries, laughter, and the clink of glasses once filled the air, but alongside them was the violence and treachery that so often followed men of the sea. The inn became famous not only because of its history but also because of the novel by Daphne du Maurier, who immortalized it in her 1936 book Jamaica Inn, turning the legends of smuggling into literature. Yet even before the book and long after it, the inn itself has been home to strange happenings, unsettling noises, and chilling apparitions. To step into the Jamaica Inn is to feel the weight of history pressing down on you. The thick walls, the uneven stone floors, the heavy wooden beams, all seem to breathe with memories of centuries gone by, and with those memories, it seems, come the spirits who refuse to leave. One of the most common hauntings tied to the inn is that of ghostly footsteps. Late at night when the bar is empty and the fire has died down, the sound of boots on the wooden floorboards echoes through the corridors. They march steadily across rooms, along passageways, and sometimes even up the stairs, only to stop suddenly as if the figure has vanished into thin air. Staff and guests alike have heard them, many so vividly that they thought someone was there, only to find the rooms empty. There is also the tale of the murdered smuggler, a man who was killed near the inn, his body found lifeless on the moor, but his spirit, it seems, never found rest. He is said to wander back toward the Jamaica Inn in search of justice or perhaps simply the company of the living. His shadowy form has been seen by drivers on the road outside, a lone figure stumbling in the mist, vanishing before headlights can reach him. Others claim he appears inside, near the bar, slumped in a corner only to dissolve into nothingness when approached. The bar itself is said to be one of the most haunted parts of the inn. Visitors report cold spots that chill the bones even when the fire burns high. Glasses have been seen to move on their own, sliding across tables or falling suddenly without reason, and voices murmur just out of reach, conversations that seem to come from the far side of the room though no one is there. Many say it feels as though smugglers from long ago are still there, their ghostly presence lingering, caught forever in their clandestine world of deals and danger. Upstairs, in the bedrooms, more terrifying encounters have been reported. Doors open and close without warning. Guests have woken in the night to find a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed, unmoving, watching, only for it to disappear when they scream or switch on the light. Others feel the weight of someone sitting on the bed, the mattress sinking under invisible pressure. Some even hear breathing beside them, hot and damp, though they are utterly alone. The sound of a horse and cart is another common phenomenon. Many visitors swear they have heard the clattering of wheels and the pounding of hooves outside the inn in the dead of night. Yet when they rush to the window or the courtyard, the road is empty, silent, with only the moor stretching endlessly in the mist. Some believe this is a phantom smuggler's cart making its eternal journey across the moor, still bound to the inn where so many illegal goods once passed. Perhaps the most chilling story is that of ghostly voices carried on the wind. Guests sitting in their rooms at night often report hearing whispers outside the windows, muffled conversations in thick Cornish accents, as though men are still plotting their smuggling deals. Sometimes the voices are accompanied by heavy footsteps crunching across the gravel yard, but when investigated, no one is there, only silence and the wild sweep of the moorland beyond. Many paranormal investigators have visited the Jamaica Inn, bringing cameras, recorders, and thermal devices, and nearly all report strange results: disembodied voices captured on audio, sudden drops in temperature, and shadowy movements caught on film. One group even claimed to have recorded the ghostly phrase, "Get out," spoken clearly into the darkness of one of the bedrooms, though no living soul had spoken it. Such accounts only add to the inn's reputation as one of the most haunted places in Cornwall and indeed the UK. But beyond the reports, beyond the stories, what makes the Jamaica Inn so frightening is its setting. Bodmin Moor itself is a desolate and eerie place. Winds howl across the open land, mists rise quickly to engulf the landscape, and the isolation is complete. Standing there at night, with the inn looming out of the fog, it is not difficult to imagine smugglers lurking in the shadows, or restless spirits wandering the moor, drawn forever back to the Jamaica Inn, their refuge in life, their prison in death. To this day, people flock to the inn not only for its history and fame but for the chance to encounter the paranormal. Some leave shaken, their experiences too real to dismiss. Others come away fascinated, eager to return, but almost all agree on one thing: the Jamaica Inn is not just a pub, not just an old smuggler's haunt. It is a place where the past still breathes, where footsteps echo long after they should have faded, and where the dead share the night with the living. Number 18. Barry Pomeroy Castle, Devon. Deep in the wooded countryside of Devon, hidden away from the bustle of modern life, stand the ruins of Barry Pomeroy Castle. A place that looks like something straight out of a Gothic tale. Its crumbling stone walls rise against the trees, ivy creeping across its surfaces, and a silence that feels heavy with memory, and for centuries it has been whispered of as one of the most haunted castles in the whole of England. Though only ruins remain today, the castle carries with it centuries of dark history, betrayal, and tragedy, and many believe that those who once lived and died here never truly left. The castle was begun in the late 15th century by the powerful Pomeroy family, and later passed to the Seymour family, a name that brought with it royal connections and ambition. Yet the ambitions of men often come with blood, and Barry Pomeroy Castle is no exception. Legend tells of feuds, of jealousy, of violence and death, and it is perhaps this that has left such strong echoes within the walls. The air around the ruins always seems colder, the shadows deeper, and those who come to visit rarely leave without a story of unease. Among the most famous spirits tied to Barry Pomeroy is the Blue Lady, a figure seen gliding through the dungeons and winding staircases. She is said to lure men into the darkest parts of the ruins, leading them astray. Her story is tied to family shame and cruelty. Some say she was the daughter of one of the Pomeroys, hidden away after a scandal. Others say she was imprisoned by her own kin and died in torment. Whatever her true tale, her restless presence seems forever bound to the castle, her blue figure fading in and out of sight, sometimes with a hand raised as if in warning, sometimes beckoning deeper into the shadows. Another tragic spirit is known as the White Lady, thought to be Margaret Pomeroy, who, as legend says, was imprisoned by her jealous sister Eleanor. Margaret was said to be beautiful and beloved, qualities that sparked Eleanor's envy. In her rage, Eleanor is said to have locked Margaret away in a dungeon deep beneath the castle, where she languished until she starved to death. To this day, visitors report seeing a pale figure drifting among the darkest chambers, her sorrowful face etched in suffering, her spirit unable to escape the torment that ended her life. The castle grounds too have their share of eerie happenings. People walking through the ruined gatehouse or exploring the overgrown walls often hear the sound of cries carried on the wind, sudden footsteps following close behind, or the clash of weapons as though battles long past are still replaying. Sometimes horses are heard galloping, though the pathways are empty, and voices murmur low, impossible to make out yet undeniably present. Those who linger after dark describe an oppressive atmosphere, a weight that grows heavier the longer you remain. Electronic devices fail, batteries drain, cameras glitch, and sudden cold drafts sweep through even in the stillness of summer nights. Paranormal investigators have recorded strange lights, unexplained shadows darting between walls, and even voices calling faintly on recorders, whispers of names, desperate cries for help, or groans of pain. What makes Barry Pomeroy Castle so unnerving is not only the stories but the way the ruins themselves seem alive. The cracked windows stare like empty eyes, the corridors twist into darkness, the stone staircases climb to nowhere, and the ivy-covered walls appear to close in. It feels as though the very stones remember what happened here, and they are determined to keep the memories alive through restless spirits and chilling presences. Barry Pomeroy is no ordinary ruin. It is a place where sorrow and betrayal carved themselves into history, and where the ghosts of the past still walk among the crumbling towers. For those brave enough to visit, it offers more than just a glimpse of history. It offers a brush with something otherworldly, a reminder that not all stories end when life does. Some remain, tied forever to the ruins, whispering their tragedies into the night. Number 19. The Red Lion in Avebury. In the heart of Wiltshire lies the quiet village of Avebury, famous for its vast stone circle, older and even larger than Stonehenge. But hidden among the ancient stones stands the Red Lion Inn, a centuries-old pub that is more than just a place for weary travelers to drink and rest. It is said to be one of the most haunted inns in all of England, where history, tragedy, and restless spirits mingle in the flickering candlelight and the low creak of wooden floors. The Red Lion dates back to the 17th century, its beams darkened by time, its walls heavy with memory, and from the moment you step inside you feel the weight of centuries pressing in. Though it is warm and welcoming by day, as night falls a different atmosphere takes hold. The air grows heavy, whispers seem to stir in the corners, and many who stay here swear they are never truly alone. The most famous spirit of the Red Lion is that of Flory, a young woman tied to a tale of betrayal and murder. According to legend, she was the wife of a soldier who went off to war, but in his absence she took a lover. When her husband returned unexpectedly and discovered her infidelity, his fury knew no limits. In a fit of rage he is said to have dragged her to the well outside the inn, tied her with ropes, and threw her into its dark waters where she drowned. From that day forward her spirit has remained, bound to the inn and its well. Guests and staff alike report seeing Flory wandering the rooms and hallways, a pale figure dressed in white or sometimes in more indistinct flowing garments. She often appears near the well, her sorrowful eyes fixed on the depths, as though still trapped in her watery grave. Some say she weeps quietly, others claim she screams, her voice echoing through the building and into the night. And those who have looked into the well have felt icy chills rush over them, or even seen her ghostly face staring back from below the water's surface. But Flory is not the only presence said to haunt the Red Lion. There are whispers of ghostly children playing in the upstairs rooms, their laughter faint and unsettling, doors that open and slam shut without explanation, and cold spots that chill the bones no matter the warmth of the fire. Shadowy figures have been seen moving across the bar when it is empty, and some guests wake in the dead of night to find an unseen weight pressing on their chest, holding them down, leaving them gasping for air. One of the rooms, known among visitors as particularly haunted, is said to leave those who stay overnight trembling, bedsheets pulled away in the dark, whispers close to the ear, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Many guests have refused to sleep through the night, instead fleeing downstairs until dawn breaks. Even the staff admit that locking up the inn at night can be unnerving, the sound of footsteps following them when no one is behind, or the faint glimpse of figures vanishing through doors that lead to empty spaces. What makes the Red Lion even more chilling is its position, standing in the middle of the ancient Avebury stone circle, a place steeped in mystery, legend, and spiritual energy. Some believe that the stones themselves amplify the hauntings, their ancient power feeding the spirits tied to the inn, and so the restless dead find no peace within its walls, their voices forever echoing between stone and timber. The Red Lion Inn is a place where history and legend intertwine, where tragedy has left a scar that time cannot heal, and where even the most skeptical visitors often leave with shivers down their spine. For those who enter its doors, it offers more than food and drink. It offers a glimpse into the unseen, a reminder that the past does not always rest quietly, and sometimes it lingers, waiting in the shadows by the fire, or watching silently from the well outside. Number 20, Corfe Castle, Dorset. High upon the rugged hills of Dorset stand the ruins of Corfe Castle, its broken towers and shattered walls rising against the sky like jagged teeth, a monument to blood, betrayal, and centuries of ghostly whispers. Once a proud stronghold of kings and nobles, it is now a place where history and the supernatural walk hand in hand, where the stones themselves seem to remember every scream, every cry, every death that echoed within. The castle was first built by William the Conqueror in the 11th century, its walls thick and strong, its gates nearly impenetrable. For centuries it stood as a seat of power, watching over the rolling hills and valleys of Dorset. But power attracts violence, and Corfe Castle became the stage for wars, sieges, and executions, its history soaked in blood, and it is said that those who perished violently here have never left, their souls bound to the ruins, replaying their tragedies for all eternity. One of the most chilling legends tied to Corfe Castle is that of the murder of young Prince Edward, later remembered as Edward the Martyr. In the year 978, Edward came to visit his stepmother, Queen Elfrida, at Corfe, but her ambitions for her own son, Ethelred, burned fiercely, and she plotted against him. When Edward arrived, he was offered a cup of wine, but as he drank, assassins struck, stabbing him before dragging his bleeding body away. The prince fell from his horse, his cries echoing across the stone walls, and it is said that even now, on dark nights, the faint sound of a horse's hooves and a young boy's scream can be heard within the ruins, the ghost of Edward forever replaying his betrayal. But Edward is not alone, for Corfe Castle was a place of war, and its most famous tragedy came during the English Civil War, when Lady Mary Banks, wife of Sir John Banks, was left to defend the castle against Parliamentarian forces. With only a handful of servants and retainers, she held out through siege after siege, her bravery legendary, but eventually betrayal struck from within, the castle fell, and its walls were torn apart by explosions, leaving it the broken ruin we see today. It is said that Lady Mary herself still roams the grounds, her ghostly figure clad in flowing garments, sometimes seen standing upon the battlements, watching silently over the land she refused to surrender, her loyalty echoing long after death. Visitors to Corfe Castle often speak of strange sensations, an icy chill sweeping through even on warm summer days, whispers carried on the wind though no one stands nearby, and the sudden sense of being watched by unseen eyes. Some claim to have seen ghostly soldiers, their armor clanking faintly as they march across the courtyard. Others tell of shadowy figures standing atop the towers before vanishing into thin air, as though the very soldiers who fought and died here still guard their broken fortress. There are also tales of a woman dressed in white, sometimes called the White Lady of Corfe, drifting silently among the ruins, her face hidden, her sorrow heavy. Some believe she is the spirit of one of the many women betrayed and killed within the castle. Others think she may be a lingering presence from the Civil War, mourning her home, her family, or her life lost in the chaos of battle. At night, the castle takes on an even darker presence, its jagged ruins casting long shadows over the village below, and many who have dared to walk the grounds after sunset report the sounds of footsteps following them, though no one is near, or a sudden rush of icy wind that makes the hair on the back of the neck stand on end. Cameras often fail to capture images properly, batteries drain without reason, and those who stay too long sometimes leave with a deep unease, a feeling that they have been marked by something unseen. And then there is the sound of the well, deep within the ruins. Some visitors claim to hear faint crying rising from its depths, as though the souls of the forgotten dead still weep there, their bodies long turned to dust, but their anguish eternal. It is said that prisoners were once thrown into its darkness, their last screams echoing up the stone shaft, and now, on silent nights, those screams can still be heard, faint but unmistakable. Corfe Castle stands today as a ruin, a tourist attraction, a place of history and learning, but for those who believe, it is also a place where the line between past and present grows thin, where every shattered wall and every stone holds memory, where betrayal, loyalty, love, and rage have burned so deeply into the earth that their echoes cannot die. It is a place where ghosts still walk, where the cries of the murdered prince, the sorrow of the White Lady, the strength of Lady Mary, and the shadows of nameless soldiers remain bound to the fortress they once knew. And for those who dare to visit, it is more than just a ruin. It is a reminder that history never truly sleeps. It lingers, waiting, whispering, haunting beneath the silent Dorset skies. We have walked together through shadows and ruins, through castles where kings were betrayed, through villages where the dead still whisper, through halls where footsteps echo though no one walks, and through cemeteries where the earth refuses to rest. From the Tower of London to the broken walls of Corfe Castle, each place carries its own story, each place soaked in fear, pain, and mystery, and each one reminds us that the line between life and death is thinner than we care to admit. You have heard of betrayed princes crying out on dark nights, of ghostly queens pacing their palaces, of white ladies drifting through old ruins, of phantom soldiers who still guard the ground they bled for, of monks, children, and innkeepers who linger in the corners of villages and halls, of cries that rise from wells, of cold winds that sweep through locked doors, of whispers that call your name when you stand alone. These are not just tales, they are the living memories of the land, soaked deep into the soil, clinging to the walls, hiding in the shadows, and waiting for those who dare to listen. And now, after walking through all 20 of these haunted places, I ask you, do you believe that these souls linger? Do you believe that when the night falls and the air turns cold, something unseen might walk past you, brush your shoulder, whisper in your ear? Do you believe that history never truly dies, that the dead never truly sleep, that every scream, every betrayal, every moment of agony remains here with us, etched forever into the stones of this world? The locals know the truth. They stay away from these places when the moon is high. They whisper about them but rarely go. They warn their children not to wander. They avoid the silence of these ruins, because they know that silence is not truly silence. It is full of voices, voices that are not meant to be heard, voices that do not belong to the living. And yet you are drawn to it. You want to know, you want to feel the chill, you want to stand in the Tower of London and wonder if a queen's shadow will pass you. You want to walk the halls of Hampton Court and hear the cries of Henry's doomed wives. You want to step into the darkness of Mary King's Close and see if the plague children still reach for your hand. You want to stand in the ruins of Corfe Castle and hear the prince's scream carried on the wind. You want to feel it too. Prove it, to dare it, because curiosity burns stronger than fear. But remember this, ghosts do not appear for entertainment, they do not come for your thrill, they are tied to their pain, their betrayal, their suffering, they are echoes of agony, and if you go looking, if you go standing in those places, you may find more than just a story. You may find that something follows you home, something you cannot see but you will feel, in the cold touch on your neck, in the shadow at the corner of your room, in the whispers at night when no one is there. So ask yourself before you go, are you ready? Are you ready to carry their voices with you? If you have stayed with me through this journey, if your heart raced, if your skin turned cold, if you found yourself glancing over your shoulder as the stories unfolded, then you know that these are not just tales, they are warnings, they are doors, and once you open the door, it cannot be closed, so step carefully. And if you dare to walk through all of this with me tonight, then I ask you, show me you are brave, show me you are one of us who walk into the shadows without fear. Like this video, share it with someone who thinks they are not afraid, subscribe and join me because there are more stories, darker places, deeper secrets, and more hauntings waiting to be told. Together we can walk further into the dark. Together we can listen to the voices that others refuse to hear. Together we will never walk alone in the night again. But remember this, the next time you hear footsteps behind you when no one is there, the next time you feel a cold draft across your skin in a locked room, the next time you hear your name whispered in the dark, do not be too quick to dismiss it because the places we spoke of are real, the spirits are real, and perhaps, just perhaps, one of them has already found you. So, like, subscribe and prepare yourself because this is only the beginning, and the dead are never done speaking.